What happens when you get fired on your wedding anniversary for a performance metric? He didn't yell. He just showed one video. What happened next changed the whole company. You know what happens? You wake up with anticipation. A plan plays in your head. Today's the anniversary. 11 years. 11 whole years lived for a reason. A wife who's been through the mortgage, the hospital, the unemployment. It's all behind us. And ahead is the restaurant overlooking the city, the wine she loves, and the watch she's been dreaming of. The gift lies in the glove compartment. Everything's perfect. Well, almost. I take a quick glance at the clock. 7:12. The kids are already at school. Sarah is still asleep. I quietly walk out, close the door, and feel like a real husband. A reliable one. The one who holds the family on his shoulders. And yes, I'm 49, but I'm still the one who decides. The office greets me with a duty smile from reception and some strange silence. Usually colleagues are already discussing who forgot what in Zoom, who mixed up reports again. But here, nothing. Only Emily from HR nods at me with some kind of strained politeness. It's like I owe her money, and she's pretending it's okay. "Mark, they're waiting for you at Woodside," she says without looking up. "Woodside? Really, it's a meeting room for outside partners. Internal meetings are rare. I haven't even stepped into the office yet, and I'm already sensing something's not right." As I walk down the corridor, I notice people averting their eyes. One guy from marketing pretends to be engrossed in the screen. The girl from accounting, with whom we had coffee yesterday, suddenly starts flipping through her phone. There's a sticky silence in the air, the kind that smells of anxiety. I open the door. There are 3 people inside. Michael, the new principal with a face like a tax collector on a steroid diet. Emily's here again, now with a tablet, and some lawyer whose name I can't remember, but I know he doesn't just show up. "Have a seat, Mark," Michael says with the kind of voice that's pre-calculated in Excel. I sit down, not because I want to, but because I realize that the game has already started, and I'm not at the table, but on the menu. "I'm afraid we're having a difficult conversation," he continues. "Uh-huh. Especially on an anniversary," I say, placing a box of cake on the table. Yeah, I'm an idiot for bringing a cake into the office to treat the team. I mean, we're family, right? Due to restructuring and model changes, the company is forced to terminate your employment," Emily reads out. "It's like a TV show, only without the music and the audience." "Are you kidding?" I ask. And then I realize, no, they're not kidding. I look at them and think, how cleverly you've planned this. The paperwork is ready, the clipboard is ready, the signatures are probably already in place. All I have to do is say, "Thank you for the opportunity," and walk out without slamming the door. But you know what? 11 years, 6 consecutive quarters of sales growth, thousands of hours on the road, and you didn't even bother to give me a heads up. Are you serious? The lawyer is silent. Michael's staring at the wall. Emily hands me a folder. "Now it's all the paperwork. Read them, sign them." I don't take it. I just stand up. I take the cake. I look at it, and I leave it on the table. "You know, I really thought this day would be special. It will be, just not the way you thought it would be." I'm going out. I can feel my back getting cold under my shirt. It's empty inside. It's like I've been taken out of my own body and put in a corner to watch. In the parking lot, I get in my car. My hands on the steering wheel are shaking. I don't know what to say to my wife. I don't know how to explain to my kids that Daddy doesn't work anymore. And most importantly, I don't know why. What did I do? Where did I go wrong? I look in the mirror. My face is like a car accident, except there's no bruises. There's just the taste of betrayal. Bitter, sticky, like cheap vending machine coffee. And then for the first time all day, I feel angry. Not resentment, not confusion. It's anger. The kind of anger that slowly but surely gathers into a fist. I was still sitting in the car when I got a text on my phone. "Are you coming soon?" It was Sarah. I stared at the screen as if that would make the message change. As if it would tell me it was all a dream, just a joke, a late-night prank from HR. But no, I erased the message. Breathed in, got out of the car. At the door of the house, I couldn't think of anything better to say. "Hi, I brought the cake. She smiled, a real human face. Not like Michael, not like Emily. She took the box, kissed me on the cheek, didn't ask me anything, until I collapsed on the couch and exhaled. I was fired. Silence. Today, her voice was surprisingly even. Today. She sat down next to me, took the ring off her finger, looked at it, the inscription inside, 11 years. And this is just the beginning. The same engraved text I designed for the watch in the glove compartment. I don't know what to do, I admitted. I have no idea how to live tomorrow. She didn't say, it's going to be okay. Didn't hug. She didn't cry. Just took my hand. Then let's start by just having dinner. We deserve it. And here we sit. The kids are in their rooms. I'm eating this stupid cake and I'm thinking, how the hell did this happen? How did I get screwed on the day I was supposed to be on top? And who even gave these people the right to cross you off like a corrupted file? I went to the garage, pulled out an old file, contracts folder, letters, recommendations folder. It's all there. 11 years isn't just a number, it's a story. And you know, every story has a second side. I went back to my office, pulled out my laptop, logged into my personal email. The first thing I did was open the archive-work folder. It was there. The correspondence with Emily. I remembered how 2 weeks ago she'd asked me to re-sign a revised personal data use agreement, a new privacy policy. I didn't read it then. You should have. I opened that PDF. There's a signature at the bottom, my signature, except the file was signed and returned 12 days before I was fired. And inside, in small print, there was a line, including prior notice of termination as part of the restructuring. In simple words, I had already signed the termination without even knowing it. I've been cheated. Easy, coldly, and with a smile. I immediately texted Emily. Emily, can you please confirm who initiated this document and on what basis it was sent to me for signature? 30 minutes passed. No reply, no response. I texted Michael. No response either. Called the legal department, got an answering machine, left a message. Nothing. Then I did something they weren't exactly expecting. I called Victor, a former sales associate who was optimized 3 months ago. Mark, I thought you were the last man standing. Not anymore. What, restructuring too? Uh-huh. And tell me, did they slip you some paperwork long before that too? Shit, I did. And 2 others. We compared them later. It's standard operating procedure. They didn't even involve a lawyer. HR writes it herself. She closes it herself. I grabbed a notebook, opened up a blank page. At the top, in big letters, who's next? I sat in the kitchen, staring at my notepad as if it were supposed to fill itself with answers. The smell of heated dinner wafting through the air didn't seem cozy anymore. It was annoying. Too normal for a day of having your reputation wiped on the office carpeting. I picked up a pen and started writing out names. Josh, Linda, Victor. All of them had been optimized in the last 6 months. All had the same email template. All had a weird termination date that actually happened later than the paperwork. I wasn't the first. I was just the last on the list of people still asking questions. Went on LinkedIn, checked to see which contractors showed up at the company after they left. 3 names. One of them was connected to Emily. A photo from a conference from 3 years ago. She's holding a microphone. He's holding a notepad. They're smiling like students, except instead of a student booth, there's a banner with the partner platform logo. I took a screenshot. Then I took another. Then I went to the archive of old presentations. I opened the file with last quarter's report. In the list of expenses, a new item, external performance evaluation consulting. And the amount. Oh, that amount. It would cover my entire team's bonus. I didn't know what to do with it, but I knew one thing. If I kept quiet, I'd be an accomplice. Silent, broken, fired, and happy. And I wasn't happy. I opened the notebook again. The page of names now looked like a draft of an interrogation. And suddenly I was overwhelmed. Not by fear, not by rage. A surprising sense of clarity. None of this was a mistake. Not a system failure. It was a system. It was deliberate, cold. And if I backed down, they would continue. I wasn't just fired anymore. I was the first person who decided not to be silent. What happened next changed everything. You don't want to miss how it unfolded. The next morning I woke up early. Too early for a person who no longer has a schedule, meetings and tasks in CRM. The sun had just touched the window, and I was already sitting in the kitchen with a cup of cold coffee that I hadn't bothered to heat up. Sarah silently placed a plate of scrambled eggs in front of me. She didn't even ask me how I slept. She was right. I didn't sleep. Instead, I spent all night going over in my head last night's conversation at Woodside, the faces of those three, the box of cake I never picked up. 11 years, and it was over in one click. Deleted from the system, that was the whole ritual. No flowers, no speech, no final handshake. Just a corporate euthanasia package, signed a week before I was informed. I opened the laptop, on autopilot, logged into my personal email, an email from HR, formal, one line. Confirming termination of contract. Notification has been sent as per procedure. No name, no signature, not a shred of respect. I hit reply and wrote, procedure is when a person is warned, not set up. Or do you have new terminology there? Erased, too emotional. Wrote again, I request a copy of the agreed upon termination procedure that was the basis for the documents signed in absentia. Sent it. An hour later, no response. Another hour, no response. Then I remembered. Friday is always flex time for Emily. She only shows up for calls and works remotely. But that didn't stop her from organizing my termination. Why not find out how flexible her conscience was? I started digging through old drafts. I found the minutes of the March meeting where they discussed saving money on contractors. It says in black and white, it was recommended that external spending be reduced and internal resources be prioritized. And what happened 2 weeks later? There was a new contractor that Emily brought in. I found his name in her email. Nicholas. He's a strategic development consultant. And what's interesting is that his company is registered at the same address as one of the attendees at last year's conference where Emily was a speaker. I checked the IP from the corporate emails and the domain matches. It became clear this isn't a restructuring, it was a scheme, and I was just an interfering element. I called Victor. He answered right away. You were right, I said instead of greeting him. They're following a pattern? Yes, and it seems it's not just me. Do you have the names of the people who left in the last 6 months? He sent me a spreadsheet 5 minutes later. I started cross-referencing. They all have weird layoff dates. Almost all of them key employees. Almost all were replaced by temporary contractors. Almost all the contractors are from the same pool tied to HR. I've compiled this into a dossier. Screens, dates, references, summaries. And I started thinking, what's next? Lawyer? The press? Network? But most importantly, I realized I need to act out of emotion. I need a strategy. And that's when I remembered Julia Hoffman, the journalist from Expose. She once did a story on the corporate shadow, the shadow structures inside big companies. We crossed paths at an event. I found her email. I wrote, I have a story. It's real. Documented. If you want an exclusive, let me know. It's not just an aggrieved employee. It's a chain. I didn't expect a response right away, but it came an hour later. Tomorrow, 11 o'clock, 114 Pine Street. No recorder. Off record only. I sat there staring at the screen, and I knew there was no turning back. I'm either going to close this case or it's going to close me. I was early. The weather was just right, gloomy with heavy skies. The cafe at 114 Pine was small, with a peeling facade and the smell of black coffee that would blow your mind on the doorstep. Julia sat at the window, not wearing a raincoat, not wearing glasses, not wearing a notebook, as if it were just a meeting of old acquaintances. Thank you for coming, she said. Thank you for answering, I replied. I pulled out the flash drive. I put it on the table. Everything on it, dates, names, IPs, internal documents. I saved everything I could. She didn't reach for the flash drive. She just looked at me and asked me quietly, do you realize what you're getting yourself into? I grinned. Yes, for the first time in a long time. Yes. Julia took the cup, took a sip, and only then said, "This will go to work. But first I have to check everything with the independent counsel. Without that, the editorial board won't give the green light." I nodded. "You have a week. Then I'll lay it out myself." We agreed not to cross paths until publication. She left first. I stayed. Finished my coffee, went outside. The phone in my pocket buzzed with incoming calls from the bank, insurance, mailings. All the things that reminded me you still existed, but not in that world anymore. I drove home. Sarah was waiting with a question in her eyes. I didn't say anything. I just nodded. She understood. She always understood when I started something that couldn't be stopped. The next day I got an email from Emily. "Please acknowledge receipt of previously sent documents. Please be notified that all procedures have been followed." I didn't respond. I forwarded it to Julia. And that evening, at 7:43 p.m., she sent a short one. "This is a pressure confirmation. I'm meeting with the editorial board tomorrow. Get ready." I went to bed feeling, for the first time in a week, that I was doing something for a reason. The morning began with 3 letters and 1 phone call. The first was from the Expo's editorial board. Publication approved. It comes out at 1 p.m. The second was from Julia. Legal support received. Stand by. The third from an unknown address. You're making a big mistake. We can settle. And a call, unknown number. Hello. Mark, this is Todd from the legal department. We need to talk." His voice was polite, but it had a metallic quality to it. "We will, but only in writing." I hung up. 5 minutes after that, an incoming call from HR. I didn't get it. Followed immediately by a text from Emily. "Did you think you were hurting yourself with that?" I didn't respond. I just put it on Do Not Disturb. At exactly 1 p.m., the article came out. The headline was loud: "Silent Cleansing: How One HR Director Changed People for Money." I reread the text twice. It didn't have my name on it. There were no names of colleagues, just charts, dates, methodology. Everything we gathered was there. And at the end, the conclusion: if the links between HR and outside contractors are confirmed, we're talking about large-scale financial fraud. 2 hours later, Emily's LinkedIn was down. 3 hours later, her profile disappeared from the corporate website. 4 hours later, Victor called me. "Did you see that?" Yeah. They're cleaning it up. They're panicking. It must have hit." And then for the first time this week, I let myself go. I closed my laptop, sat on the floor by the wall, closed my eyes. I didn't know how it would end, but I did know. I took the first step, loudly, honestly, without fear. In the evening, I stepped out onto the veranda. The September air was cold, but it was in that coldness that I felt something alive. Inside the house is quiet. Sarah is in the kitchen. The children are in their rooms. Everyone trying not to be disturbed. But I knew they'd figured it out. Not by the headlines. In my eyes. I stared into the darkness and wondered what would happen tomorrow. Would someone come with a subpoena? Would they ask me to delete everything? Would they try to intimidate me? But that's not the worst part. The scariest part is to go back to being the person I was a week ago. Naive, loyal, calm. A man who believed that if you worked honestly, you wouldn't be turned in for a contract. Sarah came out onto the veranda, put a plaid on my shoulder and said quietly, "I'm proud of you." Nothing more was needed. I closed my eyes, inhaled, and I said to myself, this isn't the end. It's just the beginning. Before I went to bed, I opened my laptop again. The materials folder already weighed over a gigabyte. Screens, emails, spreadsheets, call records, all organized. I started making a list of new tasks. Clarify the legal status of Nicholas's contractor's contract. Find common vendors between terminated and new hires. Prepare a public timeline. This wasn't revenge anymore. It was defense. If they take me out today, they'll take someone else out tomorrow. Silently, quietly, efficiently. I opened a blank sheet of paper and wrote a headline. Witnesses. And below that, the first name, not mine. The name of the person they fired before me. I decided no one else would be left voiceless. This is the climax. Everything you've been waiting for is right here. Stay to see the hero put everyone in their place. The morning began not with coffee, but with the vibrating of my phone. The notification feed was like a bulletin from the front. Messages from former colleagues, LinkedIn requests, strange emails from unfamiliar lawyers. It seemed like everyone was suddenly reading. And not just reading, reposting, discussing, bombarding with comments. One message stood out. Thank you. You said something I didn't have the courage to say. I didn't immediately realize who it was from. It wasn't until later that I saw the signature. It was Mike, one of the men who'd left a month before me. Just disappeared, didn't even say goodbye. Now I understood why. He'd been forced to leave by mutual agreement after he'd caught Nicholas leaking internal contracts. By mid-afternoon, the HR department was no longer answering emails. Neither did the company's press office. But in one private chat, a screenshot popped up. The internal audit department had come to the building. Two women in business suits with folders in their hands went around the floors and called people for 5 minutes. Those 5 minutes lasted for hours. I went out to the park. I needed some air. There on a bench, Peter caught up with me. He had once been the deputy head of logistics, but now he was a courier. After he was optimized, look, I read it. You did what we were all afraid of. Thank you. We were silent. The birds were chirping. The air was full of spring and tension. That same evening, I received a phone call. The male voice in the receiver introduced himself as a lawyer from an outside consulting group hired by the board of directors. He asked for a confidential meeting. The next morning, we met at the hotel. He began without prelude. We know about your file. We want you to testify, unofficially for now, but maybe officially soon. I could feel my knees getting wet under my fingers. This wasn't just a personal matter anymore. It was more. I agreed. 2 days later, the news came out. Major HR scandal at X Corporation. Internal layoff and asset redistribution schemes under investigation. I sat in a cafe, read the news, drank black coffee, and waited. An hour later, 2 people entered the room. The first was a man in a suit with a lawyer's badge. The second was a former co-worker, Andrew, who had been fired last year. We nodded to each other in silence. Each had a story to tell. And now, finally, we had a voice. I looked at the window. It was raining outside the glass. But it was bright inside, not from the lamps, from the feeling that justice isn't a fairy tale. It's just that sometimes you have to fight for it. Over the next 24 hours, things snowballed. The company's internal chats were seething. Some were throwing accusations, others were throwing defenses. But what was truly surprising was the silence of the HR director herself. Not a single email, not a single attempt to defend herself. Only rumors. Some said she was on sick leave. Others claimed she was seen leaving the building with a box of personal belongings. No statement, no explanation. Meanwhile, I started getting letters from people I didn't know. Lawyers, journalists, former employees from other branches. One of them, a man named Tom, sent a scan of a letter in which the HR director was literally dictating who should be laid off in the next quarter. The dates showed that she was planning my exit 3 months before that very day. My wedding anniversary. As I reread that letter, I had only one thought ringing in my head. It wasn't about me personally. It was a clear, cold-blooded calculation. People in spreadsheets, columns in Excel, not fates, but lines. That night, I reviewed the videotape of my termination. Yes, I recorded it, just in case. The video shows her looking at me, pressing her lips together, saying, "I'm sorry, but we have to." And that's when I realized. There was no regret in her gaze, just a detached politeness. Like she was just closing a browser tab. That tape became important. A day later, I gave it to my lawyer. He looked at it and only nodded. The evidence had been collected. Now it was up to the ethics committee and the board of directors. They were scheduled to meet on Friday. On Friday, cameras showed up in the building. A reporter from a major business channel had arrived. He waited at the main entrance until one of the cars pulled up right in front of him. The chairman of the board got out and headed inside with a look on his face like a surgeon before surgery. By noon, the network exploded. Videos from inside, anonymous posts, rumors. But one moment went viral. The HR director was coming out of a meeting, and one of the employees, the same one she fired last year, was standing at the door. He was silently looking her in the eye. She lowered her gaze and walked on by, without a word. For me, that was the twist, not the end. But it was the beginning of the end. Monday came with an unexpected calm. I didn't wake up with an alarm, didn't wait for a catch from incoming emails. I just sat on the veranda with a cup of coffee and read, a long letter from one of the board members. He wrote without formality, "Thank you. You didn't just spread the word, you changed the rules." He said that as a result of an emergency meeting, the HR director had been suspended. An independent review has been initiated of all terminations in the last 2 years. My situation is key. He asked me to testify formally on the record for the ethics committee. I'm no hero, and I'm certainly no messiah. But I said yes. The taping took place in a cold conference room, camera, microphone, a committee member across from me. I recounted everything: conversations, emotions, emails, rumors. Not a single exaggeration, just the facts. A week later, I was invited again for an internal discussion of the results. I sat in the audience with a few other people. One by one, they read out fragments of their stories. Some had falsified reports, some had direct pressure to quit, and all the threads led back to her, to the person who for years created the illusion of care, while behind the scenes there was optimization with calculation. The chairman of the board caught up with me on the way out. "Are you looking for a job?" he asked with the same expression of surgical focus. I was confused. "Not that, but..." He handed me a business card. "We have a project. We need someone who knows how to tell the truth, even when it's uncomfortable." I came home that evening. I turned on my laptop. I reread the letter and deleted it. I didn't need it anymore. I was no longer just a victim. I was a man who stood up and said, "A voice is not just a sound, it's a weapon." And now I knew how to use it. A few more days passed. Everything seemed to settle down. Life was settling into a new rhythm. But one evening, when I was just setting up the coffee machine and flipping through the mail, a letter arrived. From her. Subject line: reassessment. Inside, 3 paragraphs. No apology, no acknowledgement, just formal wording. "If you feel your actions were appropriate, then perhaps I did reevaluate my approach." That's it. No signature. I stared at the screen and felt not anger, not satisfaction, emptiness. This person even now didn't realize that it wasn't the approach that was the problem. It was that to her, people weren't people. They were parts of a machine. I didn't reply. I just closed the letter. The next day, Jake texted me. We had once worked on a project together in logistics. Then he left for another state. He wrote, "I forwarded your story to my daughter. She's in college, says she now understands why you need to know how to say no." I sat there holding the phone and realized the story wasn't about getting fired, and it wasn't about a career. It was a lesson for all of us. That silence is also a choice, and sometimes the most dangerous. A week later, I started working on a new project. There were different people there, a different culture. I didn't have to hide notes, copy emails, or walk around the office with an internal tremor. I was just working. And when one day the new director said, "Thank you for your honesty," I realized that was it. Everything was back. Not the way it was before. It's back to what it deserves. Now when someone asks me why I left, I answer simply, I didn't leave. They tried to take me away. But I stayed, in a different place, with other people, but with myself, finally. And that's what matters.